I don't know whether I've done that right. Anyway, Brian Turner, welcome to my restaurant live. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you for ages and ages and ages. You've been in lockdown, and so have we all. Just tell me, Brian, right now, what are you doing? I mean, what are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow? I saw you on Ainsley, I think, on Saturday, did I?
Yes, that was recorded before all this shutdown nonsense. I'm drinking fresh champagne because thank you very much to you and to them. That's very kind. So that's what I'm doing today, really.
It's just sitting at home drinking fresh on fresh. Louis, thank you so much. Thank you for setting up
thank
for
you,
Brian.
Louis. Very good help. Bon santé.
No,
it's quite an interesting question, Bob. It's people ask you what you're doing and you say, well, actually, I've got no contracts because everything seems to have stopped. And then they say, well, can you do this? You say, well, I can't do that because I'm busy that day. And you actually are. There's so much going on, what with the Royal Academy, with Future Chef. And I tell you what, I've been cleaning out my storage that I've had for a few years, which is amazing. The stuff I found in there brings back so many happy memories, so much work to do to classify it all and to make it a record of the life that we've been living for so many years. But I said to a chef the other day, it's a bit like I've been in the business now 50 to 60 years. And many things I've learned is that you got to get your mise en place ready before you start. So I, like many others, I suppose, I'm just getting myself organized for when all this comes to some kind of proper pattern where we can do what we do in hospitality and give me the platform to go forward. I'm knocking on a bit now, which is why I have to stay in lockdown all the time, but I feel quite young and energetic, and so I'm in the reserves. I'm waiting for the bugle to sound, the lights to go green, off we go. Restaurants are opening again, bars are opening, people are just enjoying hospitality. I will be there.
Oh, Brian, it's lovely. Look, it's lovely to see you. It's lovely to hear you. I have a few notes here. I've known you for so long. You are one of the icons, one of the faces of food on our TV screens in restaurants over the last, well, I don't know how many years, but certainly whenever I suppose in my time seeing you before I knew you was in those early, probably Ready Steady Cook days or something like that, maybe.
Ready Steady Cook this morning.
Pardon?
Ready Steady Cook and this morning with Richard
and this morning,
Julie.
yeah, absolutely.
Those were the big ones. At the time, they were the only.
What years were that? What year are we talking about then?
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s. I don't know the exact dates because I'm not good at remembering things like that.
Well, you look great. You look fit and well. You look fabulous.
You're not hitting on me.
Pardon?
You're not hitting on me.
I'm not. No, if I was going to do that, I'd have done that years ago. Before I got married to this wife. And Brian, I think really for the audience and we're going to post this out on our channel. I've only done 2 Zooms within these lives, and one was with you and one is with Ainsley. But they're really nice to do because they feel very relaxed and very lovely. And I suppose really for somebody that's been around for a long time, I'm trying not to make you.
No, but you can say it. I take pleasure. Okay. I take pleasure in saying that I've been around for a long time. When all this gets back to some kind of normality, some kind of pattern, when people say, well, how was it in the 60s and 70s? Well, they say, well, there's only one person to ask that's still around that was then in the 60s and 70s, still working. That's Brian Turner. And he'll come and talk to you about it whenever you like and charge you a massive fee.
Oh, absolutely.
I learned that from you.
Well, if I can help in any way to get you those massive fees, I will do. But it is wonderful because you are this legend. You are the face of, everyone knows you. I've been with you so many times, whether we're walking through a station or whether we're going anywhere, and everyone knows your face. But and you're a Yorkshire lad, I think.
Indeed.
And where did, I always get somebody else I said was Yorkshire and they were Lancashire. And of course it's like, literally, it's like, hang on.
Not a clever thing to say, Bob.
There was no. But where did your love for food come, or where did your love for cooking come from?
Well, first thing I want to say is, if you just put your hand in the air like that, it means I'm going on too much, because I could go on for ages about it. But I was very fortunate. I was born in 1946, just after the war. My father, who used to work in the Co-op in Morley, our hometown, as a fruit salesman, was posted into the army and went into the Army Catering Corps, and he just loved it. So when he came back, he went back to the Co-op, and they asked him to run the canteen, and he got a reputation. Somebody told me, it must be 10 or 12 years ago now, they sent me a little booklet, which was the history of Morley Co-op, and in it was my dad's name, creating a name for himself in the canteen of our local Co-op. And so he then bought into a transport cafe where all the lorry drivers used to pull up and do bacon sandwiches, breakfast, and then lunch for the factories and the mills round about. And they'd all ring up, and literally they'd ring up to say, it's the da-da-da-da-da factory around the corner. We want 200 bacon sandwiches, 150 sausage sandwich, 2 bacon and egg, and you have to get all this, and you get them all ready in a box, and they'd come and pick them up at a certain time, take them back to the factory, and people in the factory would eat these bacon sandwiches. We had 4 children in our family in 5 years. My dad was a very productive gentleman, and my mum was a lovely, lovely lady. And so I was the eldest, the firstborn. So to get me out of my mother's way so she could look after the other 3, because 2 of them were twins, my dad used to take me to his cafe to work. Right. Well, he looked after me. And when I was this high, whatever high I was, I'm not sure. And I suspect that one night when I was asleep, he injected me with lard from the sausages and the bacon. And I've been hooked on it ever since. I was head chef in my dad's cafe when I was 10 years of age.
Oh, how lovely.
And on a Saturday morning, when we were big enough, all 4 of the kids used to go down to the cafe, leave my mother alone on a Saturday. And my dad would say, when we closed at 11:30, lock the door so we could mop the floor and clean the tables and everything. He'd lock the door on his way out and say, I'm just going round the corner to see a man about a dog. We all thought we were getting a dog, but we never got a dog. I'm not a dog person. And he went next door to the pub to talk to his mates and come back half an hour later. And we were allowed to have a chocolate biscuit as a prize for doing the cleaning up properly. So we all got a blue ribbon, and they were in those days, which were the champion biscuit. Yeah. So it was in me blood from whatever age I was, 7 or 8. But it was just going to work with my dad and just watching and smelling and looking. I mean, these taxi drivers were 6 foot summit, and they were massive guys. And you learn. And one thing I learned was, when somebody asks you for something, listen and give it to them. Don't change it for something else. Look here, lad, I asked for a bacon, sausage and egg sandwich, not a tomato dip. I want the right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll do it.
I can see how I knew this was going to be, without a shadow of a doubt. Like, you're a great mate, but I just knew this was going to be the easiest of all interviews I've done, because it's just, there's endless stuff. So let's move on. Funnily enough, you just reminded me, when my parents had pubs, and my grandparents lived next door to a pub in Iffley in Oxford, not the Iffley up there, or Ilkley up there, the Iffley down here.
Okay, right.
And I used to get a penny. I was about 6, I think. I used to get a penny for collecting 50 glasses. And I used to take a little trolley, and I'd be pulling around the garden in this trolley, and people put all their glasses. Bearing in mind I was 6, I'm taking a trolley with 50 glasses. I mean, it sounds insane, but.
See, that's the difference. If I can just say, I was working for mine, and you were entrepreneuring.
At 6, I got a penny. I got 1 and 3. I'll never forget. I got 1 and 3 in old money, and I could then go to the shop at the end of the week and spend my 1 and 3.
Yeah.
At 6. But so now, well, let's move forward. So you've got it in your blood. You've been injected with lard.
So then I went to, I passed my 11 plus in the old days, and I went to Morley Grammar School, And I was never the brightest, but I wasn't the dumbest of students either. And come in the third year, when I was just about 15, in the mid-1950s, you had to make a choice of craft. The girls would do needlework or domestic science, and the boys would do woodwork or metalwork. Well, I've never been able to make a table that stood straight, and I've never seen the sense in bending metal when there's other people can do that. So I said, could I do domestic science? And of course, in the 1950s, we weren't as liberal as we are today.
No.
And they all thought, there's something up with him. He's gone up with lasses. I'm a bit worried about that lad there. But of course, then they very quickly realised that I was the only one in the domestic science class with all girls. So I was having a whale of a time, just me and all the lasses. It was fantastic. But then, of course, every dog has its day. I had my day. Elsie Bibby, who was my great domestic science teacher, my goddess, a lovely spinster of the parish, thin as a rake, and she would talk in a high-pitched voice. She was a lovely lady, and she would always say, when we'd done something, it's usually a Victoria sandwich, "Now, come on, girls, let's go look at Brian's. This is bound to be the best." So, being hated by the boys, I was then hated by the girls, because she said I was the best in the class, mainly because I was the only lad.
Oh, right.
And between her and my dad, on a careers night, much against my mother's wishes, who had seen the hours that my dad had to do, who wanted me to be a doctor, a lawyer, and a police inspector all at the same time, bless her. She didn't like it, but they talked me into going to Leeds Catering College, which I did.
Right.
And I went to Leeds Catering College, and I then suddenly I saw the French language. Like Mr. Brooks, who taught me French, said, "You will never speak French, Monsieur Turner. I would give it up if I were you now." And now, of course, I love speaking parler en français. And he was wrong, bless you, Mr. Brooks, wherever you are. But they convinced me to go to Leeds College of Food Technology, which I did, and did an all-round catering course, service, back of house, front of house, and cooking. And once again, I saw it was a while ago, I saw my report that said, Brian will make a better manager. Brian had better make a good manager because he won't make a great chef. Having said that, I won 3 prizes at school's speech day for the best practical results in my exam, which was great. And I listened to all these people talking, but at this time I still just wanted to make bigger and better bacon sandwiches with my dad and have a stack of transport cafes. And I suddenly realised there's a bigger world out there. I went to work between the 2 years of college. I went to work at Butlins in Bognor Regis, and 2 of us applied, and they said yes to me and no to my mate John White. So I had to decide either to show that I'd lost my bottle and wasn't going to go without him, or go by myself. So I went all the way by myself, and it was a fantastic experience. And I ended up 35 years later having a restaurant in Butlins in Bognor Regis.
I know.
It was quite amazing. So I did catering college, and there I realised. So I wrote to all the cruise ships, which were the place to go, fine dining in those days, or to the London hotels, the Savoy, the Dorchester, the Park Lane, Regent Palace, all those. I wrote to all those people, and I got a reply from the Savoy Hotel saying, "Dear Mr. Turner, we're very sorry, but we don't have a position at the moment in the Savoy Grill, which is probably the best restaurant in the world, certainly in the UK, probably in the world at the time. And but we do have a position at Simpson's in the Strand, our British restaurant. And when a position comes available in the Savoy Grill, we'll transfer you across." That was a con. They didn't have enough staff in Simpson's. They needed people. They'd take anybody. And so I went down to London. And it's a lovely little story. I say, put your hand in there if you're going on too much. But I got to Leeds City.
I got my little list here. It was absolutely pointless.
I got to Leeds City Station with my mum and dad in the car. They took me there to go on the train. And the kids didn't come because we knew it was going to be I'm a tearful, emotional person, as you well know. And we knew it was going to be tearful and emotional. So I get to Leeds City Station, and suddenly the guy says, "All aboard, please, all aboard." So my mother burst into tears, and my dad comes up and he says, "Yeah, son, I know you'll be a great success. This will help you." And he gave me a £20 note, as I recall. Somebody tells me there weren't £20 notes in those days, but I thought there was, because otherwise only a tenner. So he gave me this pound note, a £20 note, and said to me, "And I don't want you to worry, lad. You can pay me back whenever you like." My dad was making it, I don't know where he got 20 quid from. And it was making it clear that it wasn't a gift, it was a
Right.
loan.
It was a loan.
And so I arrived in London, and I met this other guy, Neil, who'd been in college with us. And he was the only one who came to London besides he and the rest of the team, just the two of us. And we went to stay at the Caledonian Home for Christian Gentlefolk in Euston. And it was just 10-minute walk from King's Cross Station. So I walked across there and I get in, and he got me a room organised. It had a bed, which was we had grey sheets on, grey blankets on it. It had the walls were painted grey. It had one wardrobe, which was in painted grey wood. And outside, when you looked outside, all you could see were grey clouds. And I burst into tears and thought, blow this. I'm going to go back. I'm going to use my dad's money. I'm going to go back home. I've had enough. I can't stand. But I stood it out. And I went to Simpson in the Sun, where, as you well know, I walked down on the first day of work, I walked down the back door to the timekeeper's office, who was a man, bless him, who looked like Quasimodo's twin brother. "Yeah, what do you want?" And I said, "My name is Brian Turner, and I've come to, I'm working here. Go and see the chef." So he sent me downstairs. And as I got downstairs, there's a little fat kid running from the stores to the stoves, and I bumped into him. And it was Richard Shepard.
Oh, yeah.
And as you know, Richard Shepard, as well as I do, of Langan's fame, we've been mates ever since, some 50 odd years since.
Wow.
It's a marvelous.
I mean, amazing. I can recall that my first day in London, I was dropped off by my father at the PM Club.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the PM Club where Jason?
I'm a trustee of the PM Club as we speak.
Right, and I was there, and my first room was 3 boys in a room, 2 boys, one guy from Yorkshire, one guy from Croydon or something, if I remember, and me, and I was this country boy, been to London, you know. I only lived in bloody Berkshire. It wasn't like I was miles away, but we just weren't, you know, this was 1972.
Yeah, but don't forget, Bob, the driver was outside in the car waiting for you if you wanted to go somewhere.
Yeah, the Rolls was parked next door. Yeah, but it was, and I was the same. I rang my parents and said, "This is horrendous. I don't know how we're going to do this." Anyway, we stuck it out, and you know, and we're all that much better for it. But let's move on to we're gonna go on to the Richard Shepard thing, the Richard Shepard bit, because, and I know that you had your amazing restaurant in Walton Street, Turner's, and you had that for a number of years. But obviously, I think the bit that everyone will really want to hear about is the Capitol Hotel where you and Richard went. And obviously the chef that came through you guys, or you'll tell me exactly, it was Gary Rhodes, of course. And the greenhouse, and then Langan's and Turner's and the Capitol and Michelin. I mean, suddenly it seemed to happen really quickly. These accolades were starting to be thrown on you.
I think that we were very lucky, and I say that knowing what we know this very minute at whatever time it is, that we're very lucky to be around in the era that we've been around in as far as hospitality is concerned. You're quite right. I personally think we made fantastic progression in gastronomy and in thinking about food. We haven't made as much as perhaps we'd like to do, but we still made great strides forwards as far as a nation's concerned and as far as a country's concerned, and that's the United Kingdom as far as I'm concerned. And as you say, Shepard was part of that. We were part of that. Then the French invasion happened, the Roux brothers, Michel Bourdin, and then the European people, the Peter Kronbergs of this world, all arrived and taught us a great deal about what we didn't know because we hadn't been to France in those days. We started not saying we kicked it off, but we were part of the earlier people who went to work in Europe to understand how the Europeans lived and ate, and then how the service, how the food was cooked and served to them. And so we were very lucky that we're at the front end, but in some ways it would have been nice to be younger now and then get involved as we did. We were pre-Marco days, pre-Gordon Ramsay days.
Yeah, yeah.
But nevertheless, I personally believe we, as a set of people, set some great foundations on which the nation built. And so when I started, all restaurant managers were called Giovanni, Pepe, Albert, Michel, Jean-Pierre. We're all French or that part, or Swiss, Austrian, all that part of the world. But when we got through the era, there were lots of great British chefs, and you named some. So Richard Shepard left the Savoy. Richard Shepard left Simpsons and went to work in the Savoy Grill. Then a couple of years later, I left Simpsons and went to work in the Savoy Grill. Then Richard Shepard went to the Grand Hotel Cap Ferrat on the French Riviera and to La Réserve restaurant. I went from the Savoy to Switzerland and worked in the Beau Rivage Palace, which was, once again, was one of the world's great,
amazing.
And still is, I understand, a fantastic.
Yeah.
He then came back from you. In fact, I was the only English person at Shepard's wedding on the Riviera.
Wow.
And because I was in the garde manger at the Beau Rivage, and I managed to juggle my days off around, so I got a trip of about 7 days when I went down to be his mate, his best man in effect, at his wedding. And when I came back, they all said to me, "Look out, chef's looking for you." He was a Frenchman who'd been badly treated by the English in Portsmouth Harbour during the war. And as soon as he got a chance, he called me into the kitchen and gave me such a toweling, because he made out that I'd actually taken time off that I wasn't due, but I hadn't. I'd saved some weeks earlier.
Oh my God.
Saved it up, worked all the time. But nevertheless, great learning curve. And I still have friends in Lausanne today as we speak.
Yeah.
Still speak to them once every 2 months and in French.
Oh, amazing.
So Shepard came back to the Dorchester Hotel, and I came back and I went to Claridge's Hotel. And then he got a job at the Capitol Hotel and said, "Why don't you come along and be my sous chef?" There were only 5 of us in the kitchen, for goodness sake, but nevertheless, I was number 2 in command. And he then went across back to the south of France, up to les Alpes-Maritimes, to Pierre Glaise at La Bonne Étape, and worked with him to try and put a menu together to hit London with what was going on in France and Europe, organised by David Levin. And he went out 3 or 4 months.
All right. Yeah.
Whilst he was out there, and he came back and then he did a menu, and that's how it really all started. And then his name, Quentin Crew, came in, wrote about it, and suddenly, and Sheila Hutchins, I think it was, and suddenly, pow, the gastronomic thing, just 1971, just set off completely. It's brilliant.
And you guys were literally the Capitol had a Michelin star. It was the first or the only restaurant in London with a Michelin star that was run by English guys.
That's right. Yeah.
And I only did this because I did it with Simpsons, but going back in those days, there was something like 20 Michelin star restaurants in the UK. 20,
right.
I think, around that.
I'm surprised that there were that many.
Yeah, I mean, it was around when I was looking at something I did at Simpsons, and it may have been less. I was. What year are we talking about? 70s?
75, 74,
Yeah.
75.
So it could be, because I was looking, I did some research, something about 1981 or something, and they were about to it. So there could be less. And you think today there's, I think, around 140 today.
Yeah.
So in a relatively short space of time, if you multiply that to today, that is a monumental feat from our own, our hospitality and our trade that we have managed to do that. And I think there's a wonderful sort of I call it the chef family tree, where you could have all of the chefs from here, and you feed down into the chefs of the next generation of chefs, and then you feed and slowly that sort of 10 or so at the top produce. Now there's probably 100 down here that have come through those sort of initial starts. And it's quite amazing when you look at some of those chefs like Pierre Kaufman, you know, or someone like that. And you then see all the chefs that have come under him, and Raymond Blanc and all of those others, who is probably slightly, you know, there's the others, the Mosselmans and the Kaufmans and the Edelmans possibly, and all of those, I would imagine.
I think you missed out a name there that you need to. A lot of all that was started or influenced by the Roux brothers.
Yes.
And Michel and Albert had a great contact there, and that's in fact where the Club 9 was formed, and that's where the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts started its seeds in the UK. But you're quite right. Like all family trees, it starts with Adam and Eve, and it moves and gets bigger as it goes on. But there are certain names that had people working for them. But what it doesn't always track is the influence that some people had, even though the people didn't work for them. But people that worked up for the Marco, the Ramsay, Stephen Terry era, there were far more of those, because people were now getting to understand that you need to move about a bit. When we started, we didn't want to move about. It was seen as a sign of insecurity if you had to keep moving your job. In fact, if as long as it was planned and you were getting the experience and learning from a different person, it was giving another factor to your life, to your experience, which helped you see very.
No, I find the whole, you know, look, I've been around a long time.
They do say that.
I have, I've never achieved your goals of being involved with Michelin, and I am involved with Michelin, as obviously now, as you know, and for me, sort of in an inadvertent way, I've managed to achieve something that I always wanted to achieve, but I couldn't achieve it with my own personal skills. But what I have learned, and because lockdown has opened up many opportunities for all kinds of things, whether they're boxes of food that come to you from all different chefs around the country, is how wonderful produce is today. And I know that sounds ridiculous, because if I'm running the events and doing everything and running like a headless chicken, as I was for years, running up and down to London, getting the early morning train, eating in these gorgeous restaurants and having, you know, a nice time. What lockdown has done for me, Brian, is it's taken me back to cooking, which I absolutely adore, and I always have done. But more than anything, it's made me really appreciate great produce and great local produce. And I think that I remember you on TV so many times shouting about great sausages or great potatoes or great carrots or something. And I now have totally changed my shopping habits. I go to a wonderful farm shop up the road here, which is called Vickers, where Brett Graham used to get all his stuff from, all his meat. I will not buy any produce apart from washing powder and the essentials that I need. But I might buy potatoes from Waitrose or something, but anything I need, I go every Saturday to the farm shop and I get my week shopping, and I go up and I love it. I'm walking around, I'm picking up great.
Can I just take you back a few years though? The way I saw it was that people like Albert and others, and William Black for the fish, all used to go to Rungis, the Paris market, to buy their produce, their fish and their vegetables and fruit from the French market, and bring it back here and say to people, come to our restaurant, we've got veg, it's fresh in from Rungis today. And everybody in the food business thought, we must go there and see what that's all about. But what they did was they travelled, of course, and I went with them. I went with William Black on various occasions to Runge's to help him buy fish. But what we did with, as far as the produce is concerned, is we travelled through Kent. And then we told the Kent farmers, and they told other farmers, look, this is what we want. Look at it, taste it, smell it, feel it. Can you produce it? Well, why do you tell us we could produce that? So the British farmers started to produce so we didn't have to go to France to get it anymore. We've already got it in this country. And that was really quite evolutionary as far as I'm concerned. And people realize the importance, as quite rightly as you say, of produce, of the quality of produce. But because, like the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts, we've worked hand in glove with farmers over the years, and they've seen the tourism that's come in, and people are coming because of the quality of our produce. We've all worked together, and it's far better than whatever your mum and dad used to be able to go and buy in a shop. Whereas eventually my father used to be able to go to a local farm, but it wasn't set up like it is today. What we've got, as you say, in this country, I believe you can get better beef than you can in this country. You can get better lamb than you can in this country, and you can get better pork than you can in this country. But you can't get lamb, pork, and beef in any country that's better than ours. What I'm saying is we have such a choice, such a quality of produce, and our farmers, particularly now, today, this very minute, need as much support as we can give them by doing just what you're doing. Go to the farm stores, go to places where you know someone's livelihood depends on selling the produce. Insist and tell them if this produce is not good enough, tell them, and you won't buy it till they get it right. But we have got wonderful produce in this country.
And the other thing that we have seen, of course, is the variety of produce, of course, now. I mean, when I started, for God's sake, I opened my first restaurant when I was 24 years old. You know, a salad was a lettuce, a cucumber, and a tomato. I mean, there wasn't a lot else. You might have thrown a bit of watercress on top. Because when you look at the variety of salad you can have, and the variety, of which a majority is grown here, you know, it's fantastic. But so now I'm going on because I'm conscious that we have only an hour, and I want to ask, I've got some really interesting questions. So we then go from the achievements of that. We ought to just highlight, I think, at that point, because I mentioned Gary Rhodes, he became the first rock star chef. He became, that was the title.
No, he did. But take him back just slightly prior to that. My fruit and veg man, Ivor Robbins, bless him, said to me, Chef, there's this young lad who's desperate to meet you. He really just wants to see, will you come and have dinner with me, Ivor, and his wife, Sue, and we'll go and we'll introduce you. So we went to have dinner at the restaurant that Gary was cooking in. And he came out very shy and came to see us and said hello. And can I talk to you about working with you, Chef? And I said, well, no, you can't. I said, this would be totally wrong for me to have dinner in someone else's establishment and try and poach his staff. Give me a ring, come and see me, and we'll talk about it, which is what he did. And I remember Margaret Levin, wife of the owner David, saying to me, you can't say that. I said, well, why can't I say it? I've said it. I said to him, Gary, the job's yours. You'll be my second in command, along with Ian Calver. But you got to take the earring out, and I can't have that stupid hairstyle in my. She said, you can't say that. I said, can I not say it? I have said it, and he's agreed. And give him his due. He wore his hat all the time. I never saw his silly haircut in the kitchen. And his earring came out, and I was going to say fortunate enough. It's a difficult choice of words, but 10 days before he sadly passed away, I was in Dubai working, and I'd said to him, Gary, I keep missing you. Why don't we try and meet? And he said, Chef, you tell me when you're coming and I will change whatever, because every time you've been coming, I've missed you to Dubai. And we sat and had gin and tonics that night and discussed life. What a privilege that was to talk to him then,
Wow.
in the
Yeah.
depth of the smoke. That just sadly, as I say, 10 days before we sadly lost him.
Oh
A
my
great
gosh.
loss,
Yeah.
great guy, lovely, great energy,
Mm.
great talent, and like a lot of the people that we know, Bob had a great palate. He could
Yeah.
taste,
Yeah.
got the
Yeah.
taste. I read today about something about, was it Cyrus Todiwala, who said that he's a flavorist. And I think that Gary Rhodes was a flavorist as well.
Right. Yeah.
Also quite a commercial flavorist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he great and lovely presentation skills and that lovely, warm, cuddly voice, you know. It was really good. So now, but anyway, that was brilliant. And the fact that you gave him the opportunity. You know, he became a global superstar, rock star chef, you know.
And he never forgot, whenever he saw me, say, "Hi, chef. You're right, chef. Never call me Brian. Never call me Mr. Turner. Never call me Turner. Just call me chef." All right, chef. Good. Yes, chef. You say so, chef. Okay. And we judged as well together, obviously, on the Rhodes scholarship.
Yeah.
And he was a very tough. He was a very tough marker. If he could have given minus marks, he would have done.
So we leap forward a bit here because I want to talk about some of your accolades. And I mean, one of the biggest accolades is the fact that you are a CBE, of course, which is an incredible accolade, Commander of the British Empire. I'm honored and privileged to be on the ladder.
And do as you're told. Do as you're told, Walter.
But
I'm your commander.
You are a few tiers up the ladder from me, but and I will always do as I'm told, Brian Turner. And that is obviously that was an amazing achievement. You're involved with the Royal Academy. You're involved with your Rhodes Scholarship. One of the big ones that nobody will really know about, but from my point of view, is probably one of the sort of highlights is the Buku store. Buku store. So you ought to tell everyone what the Buku store is, or the Buku store is, and how globally this happens every 2 years.
Well, it's of course a bad time to talk about it because for the first time ever we had to withdraw because of COVID-19 and sponsorship. But just go back in 1987, Paul Bocuse, who was really the king of gastronomy worldwide, in my opinion, and probably stayed that for a long, long, long time. I don't know who. Possibly people will say El Bulli took over from him, but I'm not sure about that personally. He phoned Michel Baudin and said, "I have this great idea." It's me speaking French now. "I have this great idea. I have this great idea that we could have a cookery competition round the world, but I'm going to start it in Europe," because he had connections in Europe, and he did. And so, could you send a team? So Michel Baudin from the Connaught spoke to Shepard. Shepard spoke to me, and the three of us, between us, organised in 1987. And they had to have a judge who came from the country. So Michel Baudin couldn't be the judge, but Richard Shepard was the judge in 1987.
Wow.
And Anthony Worrell Thompson was our candidate.
Right.
And
amazing.
We did all right, but we didn't do anything special. But were my eyes opened. There were people fighting, and I mean literally fighting sponsors to get their product in the arms of Paul Bocuse before the photograph was taken, so that when they saw the photo, they could say, "That is my that is my goose, that is my duck, that is my..." It was just amazing. Shepard said, "Oh, that's a circus. I can't get involved in that. Turner, you better do it next." So I took it over in 1989 and did it for 15 competitions. That's
30 years.
30 years I did it. It's every second year, and it was originally every second year, and the final was held in Lyon.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
tell everyone how many countries were involved? So I mean, it would have started here, but I remember when the USA team won, when Thomas Keller was involved. I mean, how many countries were involved then?
Well, there were about 10 countries involved to start with, and it grew year on year. I've lost my thread now. But what they did was, I think it became too commercially involved. Obviously, they needed sponsors to make it work, but they got so many sponsors in, it became, as I said earlier, a bit of a bun fight. And they then decided to have a European qualification, because they invited people from around the world, as you say, from the Americas, from South America, from China, from Asia, from Russia.
Nordics.
So now there are 24 teams get through to the final, but they now have every other year, every odd year, they have competitions to get them to get people to qualify, so that 24 held over 2 days, and there's an audience of up to 3,000 in the actual auditorium watching the whole thing.
Wow.
It's now on at Syrah, the big food exhibition in the exhibition halls in Lyon, and the hall is now called the Bocuse d'Or, Salle de Paul Bocuse, which is where they hold it. So in the memory of dear Monsieur Paul.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It takes over 2 days, and John Williams from the Ritz, who we entered once upon a time, said that he always tells people when he's talking about it, he said that Brian Turner said to me, when I said to him, how big is it? He said, I don't know how big it is really, but what happens is God closes all the churches for Bocuse d'Or because people are not concentrating on going to church. They concentrate on going to see the Bocuse d'Or competition. And all the taxi drivers, when they see you, bonjour, vous allez au Bocuse d'Or? Voilà, très bien, on y va. And it's
right. Wow.
What a PR machine.
Yeah.
What a magnificent. And you know, we had the first year that I was in control, that I was running it, we had to go over early. We got a hotel. They gave us a hotel. We then booked dinner at Pierre Rossi's 3-star restaurant in Paris, in Lyon. We had dinner there, and then whilst we were having dessert, I would go downstairs in Monsieur Rossi's restaurant, and I would choose the silver flat, because we couldn't afford silver flats. So we borrowed silver flats from him, which were this big, and we would bring it upstairs, and he'd give it to his plongeur, who would buff it up, silver it up, polish it up, so we could take a taxi with us. So we had a platter, and it used to be a fish platter and a meat platter. Now, of course, they're trying to get up to date. Sometimes I think they try to do these things too early, but it's a fantastic competition. Like many competitions that are held in the UK these days as well, it needs severe sponsorship, and that's a real problem. But this brings together people from Guatemala, from Moscow, from London, brings people, chefs together.
Well, people wouldn't know.
The work is fantastic.
People wouldn't know, that's why I mentioned Bocuse d'Or, because people wouldn't know out there that there is this basically Chef's Olympics. I mean, you could call it that if you wanted to, every other year, that there is the best, a team from each country, 3 or 4 chefs from each country come along and compete to be the world's best team, the world's best culinary team. And I know that I think Sweden might have, anyway, wherever it was, but it's fantastic. And it's very much one of the things that I've loved doing, Brian, is to try and, I can't do anything with Bocuse d'Or, I've got enough with Michelin, but to try and get some of these things out to people, to give people the opportunity to join in, to meet the chefs, to come to events. We were very, we were, and I feel we still are in a lot of ways, a closed community, and yet hospitality, the culinary skills, our chefs, our, Instagram, food and cooking is the #1 on Instagram by miles. And so it's obviously the fascination. There are TV shows coming out of your ears for cooking. There's cooking on every channel, and yet the industry tends to be very closed and keep it all to itself. And yet people out there would love to see it, which is why this year we've really wanted to open up the Michelin event to everybody. Well, and we sort of have, but we haven't done it in the room that we wanted to. What we've now done is there will be an hour show, a live streamed show, which everyone, I mean, once we've got all these bits and pieces signed off and done, everybody will be able to view. And for the first time ever, everyone, 50 million people, if you want to, will be able to see who the new Michelin star is, who the new Michelin star chef is, what their restaurant is, live online. And that is really, really unusual. That's never happened before, not to this level. I mean, it's always been live stream, but there's been an event. Now there's no event. It's basically we're concentrating on the show. So that is a completely different concept and a digital program, if you like. So I'm really excited about that. But it's about just getting things out to everyone so they can see, because the world is full of food lovers. You know, we're all food lovers, whether it's the best sausage you can buy or whether it's, you know, fine dining to the highest level. We love all the stuff there and in between.
I used to have a great philosophy for myself that one has to be extremely careful how fast we go forwards. And probably to my detriment, probably it's a fault of mine that I don't go fast enough forwards, but to make sure that however far forwards we go, we make it a firm foundation for building the future. So I think we need to be very careful, particularly now after what's happened in the world outside over this last 6 months, that we don't try to forge ahead too quickly, assuming that what was before will be again. We need to be stable, but you're quite right. I believe we have built a fantastic foundation to go forwards. It's just choosing the right time. And if there are too many competitions happening at the same time, that's probably not the best idea. So we need to work together with people, swap ideas,
yeah. No, I
and make sure that we're all ready to go forwards.
I mean, and again, you know, go back to you and your achievements and where you were and the people you were with. You know, London is recognized as the food and culinary and hospitality capital of the world. It's recognized as that. And somebody said, well, surely it's Paris. And I say, well, it isn't Paris. Well, I can tell you it isn't Paris because I'm told it isn't Paris by everyone, including the people that know. And that's because Paris is very French, of course. And there are some amazing French Michelin star restaurants in Paris, but London is so multicultural, and you have such a variety in London of great restaurants from all different cultures and styles and communities. And that's why London is recognized as the food and hospitality capital of the world, because whether it's Lebanese, Peruvian, French or Italian or what, all in between, you can get a great meal from there. Are you all right? Is there something coming?
No, it's just I wanted to look at this just because I've written this down today.
All right.
The definition of hospitality.
Okay.
The kind and generous reception and entertainment of strangers or guests. It is the fondness for entertaining guests at our houses. And I just thought that's really what we need to concentrate on.
That's nice.
It's got into, that's the dictionary definition, an old dictionary definition of hospitality. But that's so nice when we're thinking about the future. Let's not worry about whether we should have a mange tout soufflé filled with a bacon croquette as a garnish. Let's think about the hospitality well-being factor. We have to be careful we don't try too hard. It is my personal, honest opinion. We don't try too hard to be so different, because we have gone a long way in a short time. Let's consolidate, but let's make sure that we're looking after other people, which is, Robert, what we do.
And what I can tell you is that from great authority, our chefs have in lockdown been looking at their local produce because they've had to. And also developing their skills using local produce and looking at real food. And when you actually look, just going back to the Michelin, the guide on certainly a 1 star is what is on the plate. They're not worried about your wine list. They're not worried about other bits and pieces. It's what is on the plate. And it's really, and I think our chefs have developed through lockdown those skills and more skills, but also looked at all of their produce around them. Now, I don't have a restaurant. I'm certainly not in that league, but I certainly have done exactly the same thing in my world. You know, I've done my cooking online, and I've looked at all my local produce, and I will go tomorrow to the farm shop and I will get something that I know I'm going to get and I know I'm going to cook, but I can only go there. Now, I can see I've got 4 minutes left, Brian, with you. I want to bring in James into this, James Martin, who's obviously probably, well, I would imagine he is the #1 name on TV and cooking live, cooking everywhere now. And he's a great guy. I've met him with you a number of times, and he was kind enough to present you with this lovely award at the gala dinner that we did in February, which seemed forever away.
It seemed like years ago.
It seemed like years ago. But just finish up, Brian, because we're going to run out of time. And on our Zoom is James calls you his mentor, I believe, or did he work for you once? No. So
no, I said, and I'm going to retract that. I met James when he was about 8 years old, and I was running a dinner in the kitchen twice a year up near Scarborough. And he came, and his father and I were doing it together. His father was speaking, and he came and he worked with me. He didn't work with me on a paid basis, as a stage, because Werrell Thompson got hold of him. When we did the Scarborough College diplomas, we put him forward as a winner. And Werrell Thompson, and he will tell you that, said, I went to see this guy, James, and said, why don't you come and work for me before Turner speaks to you? But we have,
sounds like Worrell.
Indeed, but we have worked together on various events over the years. As you say, he's got a wonderful presenting manner, and he communicates to people, and he excites people about food. And the great thing is that he can cook. There are some presenters who do television programs who, in my humble opinion, aren't quite as good, but he can cook.
Yeah. It seemed to throw anything at him. And I hate to think how many dishes, both you would have cooked thousands of dishes on TV, I'm sure. And I've actually, only because I've been doing this through this lockdown, I've kept a tally. I've done 132 different dishes in the space of this period. And I was thinking, God, Brian would have done James would do thousands and thousands, maybe hundreds of, who knows? I mean, it just could go on and on and on. Listen, Brian, we're going to run out of our time, our recording time. It's been absolutely fabulous. I finally got you on. And,
it's been a pleasure, Bob.
No, it's lovely. Look, I'll see you really soon. I hope. Who knows what happens after December the 4th? Let's hope we can meet up. We can rule
December the 2nd.
December the 2nd, is it? Well, whatever day it is now. It was sort of, they all blow into one. Okay, Brian, I've got a dash.
Cheers, mate.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Be good. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Now, end meeting.